All right, welcome to the deep dive. We're back at it, ready to help you navigate the news and extract that crucial knowledge, especially for all of you UPSC aspirants out there.
It's all about staying sharp and well-informed, right?
Absolutely. Cutting through the noise to get to what really matters for your prep. Today is March 19th, 2025, so think of this as your quick but thorough rundown of yesterday's most important happenings.
Some might even feel like a helpful revision session for those familiar topics.
You never know when that extra review might come in handy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Today, we've got a pretty fascinating mixed stuff about the Delhi Police's new Shishtachar Squad, some big digital moves from the RBI. Oh, and Kanger Valley National Park might just be getting some UNESCO recognition.
And that's just the beginning. We'll also touch on legal advertising, Pi Day celebrations, with a record breaker no less, new things happening at Mount Fuji.
And let's not forget about the River Betwa, the Ken Betwa project, a new app for the PM Internship Scheme.
Even a rare caracal sighting and a Human Coronavirus HKU1 case in Kolkata. So, yeah, quite a lot to unpack today.
But don't worry, we'll guide you through it all. So let's dive right in, starting with, how about those Shishtachar squads in Delhi? Seems like a pretty direct response to a big issue we all know too well, women's safety in public spaces.
For sure, and that connection to the anti-Romeo squads from Uttar Pradesh is interesting. Makes you think about what works, what doesn't. What do you think they're aiming to take from the UP model, and what might they do differently in Delhi given its own unique vibe?
Yeah, that's the key question. On the one hand, it's clear they want dedicated units to tackle harassment head-on. And the structure they've laid out seems pretty comprehensive squads in every district, overseen by the ACP, Crime Against Women, a mix of men and women in the teams, even tech support, from what I read. Focusing on those hotspot areas and doing regular patrols seems logical too.
Definitely, but like you hinted at, the execution is everything, right? How do they make sure these squads actually achieve what they set out to do? Avoid those issues that have sometimes cropped up with similar initiatives.
Totally. Visible police presence might deter some things, but the real impact is going to depend on things like consistent training for the officers, clear guidelines for how they interact with people, and maybe most importantly, public trust, and ways to hold everyone accountable.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And thinking about UPSC, this ties right into governance, law and order, those social justice themes. It's all about understanding how something like this Shishtachar Squad fits into the bigger picture of effective policing, of keeping people safe.
Right. And speaking of effectiveness, but in a totally different realm, the RBI has gotten some international recognition for their digital systems, Sarthi and Pravaah, won a UK award, in fact. Let's talk about Sarthi first, which, if I understand it right, takes all of the RBI's internal work and makes it digital. Considering how massive the RBI is, that must have been a huge project. What do you think the long-term implications of this kind of digitization are?
I think what's really noteworthy about Sarthi is how much emphasis they've put on getting everyone on board. Those Sarthi Padishla training sessions and the Sarthi Metras for peer support show they're being strategic. It's not just about implementing tech, it's about making sure people actually use it effectively. In the long run, a system like this could drastically improve the RBI's efficiency, how they manage data, maybe even their policy analysis, by making information more accessible. No more data silos, which can be a real problem in big institutions.
Makes sense. And then building on Sarthi, there's Pravaah, which brings this whole digital thing to the people outside the RBI for things like regulatory applications. And that 80% increase in applications every month since they launched it speaks for itself, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about convenience. It's a sign that things are getting streamlined in a big way. And for the economy, for governance in general, this kind of transparency and efficiency in the regulatory landscape can be huge. It reduces those bureaucratic roadblocks and potentially makes the whole process more accessible, right in line with the push for e-governance we're seeing.
Right. It's all about making things easier, more efficient.
Exactly. And for all the UPSC folks out there, don't forget about the Dash Initiative, another one of RBI's digital tools. But this one is all about supervisory processes. Together, these show how serious they are about a digital-first approach, which is super relevant for understanding the Indian financial landscape.
All right, let's shift gears now. Some good news on the environment front. Kanger Valley National Park in Chhattisgarh has been added to UNESCO's tentative list for World Heritage Sites. What makes this park so special, so ecologically significant, that it's getting this kind of recognition?
It's all about that unique biodiversity and the fascinating geology of the place. You've got this mix of moist, deciduous forests, which creates a really rich environment for all sorts of plants and animals. We're talking tigers, different types of deer, and then you add in those massive limestone cave systems, Kodamsar, Kailash, Dandak.
Those sound pretty impressive.
They are. And each cave has its own little world inside, its own microclimate and specialized life forms. It's pretty incredible.
And with the Kanger River running through it, connecting to the Godavari system, it's obviously a vital water source. Plays a big role as an ecological corridor, too. It might just be on the tentative list for now, but I imagine this UNESCO recognition will give a boost to conservation efforts in the area, wouldn't you say?
Even at this stage, yeah, being on that list shines a light on the park. Could mean more resources for conservation, maybe some sustainable tourism initiatives too. And it puts the region's natural heritage on the map, globally speaking. That can lead to a sense of pride and responsibility at the local level, which is so important for long-term protection.
Absolutely. And for our UPSC folks, this ties into those big themes of biodiversity conservation, protected areas, and how international organizations like UNESCO play a role in environmental protection.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
Okay, let's move from protecting natural heritage to maintaining professional standards. The Bar Council of India, the BCI, has issued a pretty strong warning about unethical advertising in the legal field. For someone like me, not a legal expert, what exactly does that mean? What kind of advertising crosses the line, and why is the BCI stepping in so firmly?
Well, think about things like lawyers making misleading claims, promising specific outcomes. Basically anything that could be seen as guaranteeing a win, which is impossible to do ethically. There's also the issue of soliciting clients in a way that's intrusive or inappropriate.
So it's about maintaining a certain level of decorum?
Exactly. Anything that undermines the dignity and integrity of the legal profession is going to be a problem for the BCI. They're the statutory body, the ones responsible for upholding professional conduct standards. This warning shows they're serious about ensuring that lawyers act with integrity and that the public isn't being misled by advertising.
It's pretty remarkable how much they're responsible for setting those standards, overseeing legal education, even running the All India Bar exam. They really do shape the entire profession. It seems like this stance on advertising reinforces the idea that law should be about ethical service, not just a business transaction.
Precisely. It's a subtle but important distinction. And for UPSC aspirants, understanding the role of regulatory bodies like the BCI is essential for the governance and ethics papers. It's all about finding that balance between allowing professionals to promote their services while upholding ethical standards and protecting the public interest.
Right, maintaining that balance is key. Now, for something completely different, March 14th was Pi Day, and apparently a 10-year-old in the UK just set a new world record for reciting digits of pi from memory. 280 digits in 1 minute. That's incredible. It's always amazing to see that kind of dedication to something like this. Beyond being a fun little celebration, though, why is pi so important in math and science?
Pi's importance comes from the fact that it represents a really fundamental geometric relationship, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. And that pops up everywhere from basic geometry you learn in school to really advanced calculus and beyond. It even has tons of applications in science and engineering. Plus, the fact that it's irrational, meaning its decimal representation goes on forever without repeating, tells us something about the inherent complexity and beauty of math itself.
It's mind-boggling to think that this number, which has been known for almost 4,000 years, is still being explored and calculated to trillions of digits. The fact that UNESCO made Pi Day the International Day of Mathematics shows how important it is to the global scientific community. It's a good reminder that even those abstract mathematical concepts can have huge real-world implications.
Oh, absolutely. From calculating a rocket's trajectory to designing algorithms, pi is in there somewhere. Even if you don't need to memorize hundreds of digits, understanding its significance shows how foundational math is to the world around us. Definitely something to keep in mind for any UPSC aspirant with an interest in science and technology.
Now let's talk about a different kind of peak Mount Fuji in Japan. They're going to start charging a climbing fee this summer to try to manage the crowds and make things safer. Mount Fuji is more than just a mountain, though, isn't it? It's a cultural icon. How significant is it culturally and geographically for Japan?
Mount Fuji, or Fujisan as they call it, is probably Japan's most recognizable landmark. I mean, it's featured in art and literature everywhere. Culturally and spiritually, it's considered one of the three holy mountains. Geographically, it's the highest peak in Japan and an active stratovolcano, though it hasn't erupted in centuries. That beautiful, symmetrical shape has inspired art, literature, and religious beliefs for ages. And the fact that it's part of a national park and a UNESCO World Heritage Site speaks to its multifaceted importance.
It really is iconic, and this decision to introduce a fee to manage all the climbers who want to go up there raises some interesting questions about the balance between tourism, environmental protection, and safety. That's a challenge a lot of popular natural sites are facing all over the world.
Oh, for sure. It's a dilemma with no easy answers. This whole situation with Mount Fuji is a great case study for UPSC aspirants, a chance to really dig into the complexities of tourism management, the economic aspects of heritage sites, and how human activity can impact natural landscapes. How do governments balance accessibility with preservation? That's a question that comes up again and again in geography and environmental studies.
Absolutely. Speaking of environmental concerns, but closer home this time, there are reports that the River Betwa is in a pretty bad state. This river has a lot of historical significance. It's even been called the Ganga of Madhya Pradesh. What are the main factors that have led to its decline?
Unfortunately, the situation with the Betwa isn't unique. A lot of rivers in India are facing similar challenges. Over-extraction of water for irrigation and other uses is a major issue. Then you got pollution from industrial and agricultural runoff, and maybe even the effects of climate change messing with rainfall patterns. And as a major tributary of the Yamuna, the health of the Betwa impacts the whole river system. When you think about its historical and religious significance, its current state is even more tragic.
And of course, the Betwa is at the heart of the Ken Bedwa Link project, which aims to tackle water scarcity in the Bundelkhand region by transferring water from the Ken River. That project has sparked a lot of debate about its environmental impact. Given the Betwa's current condition, what do you think about the long-term viability and potential consequences of this interlinking project?
Well, if the Betwa itself is depleted and polluted, transferring water from the Ken might not have the desired effect. The success of the Ken-Betwa link really hinges on the health of the Betwa. It highlights how interconnected everything is when it comes to water management and how crucial it is to take a holistic, sustainable approach. For UPSC studies, this is a prime example of the interplay between geography, environmental science, economic development, and even historical and cultural factors. It's about understanding the challenges and the potential benefits of these interlinking projects while also considering the ecological health of the rivers involved.
It's a complex issue for sure. Now, shifting to a government initiative focused on skilling and employment, the Prime Minister Internship Scheme has just rolled out its own dedicated mobile application. The goal is to connect young people from lower income backgrounds with internship opportunities in top companies. What are the key features of this scheme, and who's it designed to help?
The PM Internship Scheme is specifically for people between the ages of 21 and 24 who come from families with an annual income of as 8 lakh or less. It's designed to provide year-long internships at reputable companies across various sectors. And one of the most important aspects is the focus on inclusivity. The eligibility criteria prioritize those who have graduated from non-premier institutions and who don't have family members in government jobs. The stipend and that one-time financial assistance are also crucial for supporting the interns financially. They're aiming for a pretty ambitious target: 1 crore internships over 5 years across 24 sectors. How do you think this scheme fits into those larger national objectives for school development and economic empowerment? It directly addresses that gap we see between what people learn in school and what they need to know for the workplace. By giving them real-world experience, it's making young people more employable. And by focusing on those from lower-income households, it's also trying to increase social mobility and economic inclusion. This is a policy that's relevant to social justice, poverty alleviation, skill development, and all those government efforts aimed at creating jobs, all important stuff for UPSC.
In some rare wildlife news, a caracal has been spotted in the Mukundra Hills Tiger Reserve in Rajasthan. For those of us who aren't wildlife experts, what exactly is a caracal and why is the sighting so noteworthy?
The caracal is a medium-sized wildcat known for its long, black, pointed ears. It's pretty elusive. They're found in some parts of Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia, but in India, their numbers are really low. Estimates say there are probably only around 50 of them left, mainly in Rajasthan and Gujarat. So this sighting is exciting because it tells us they're still out there in this particular reserve, which gives us hope for conservation efforts. They're a Schedule I protected species in India, which means they're a high priority for conservation.
It's fascinating that they can adapt to so many different habitats, from grasslands to forests, and that ability to jump super high to catch birds is pretty impressive. This sighting is a good reminder of the amazing biodiversity we have in India and how important it is to protect those often overlooked species.
Absolutely. It highlights the vital role of tiger reserves and other protected areas in conserving not just the big, well-known species, but the whole web of life within those ecosystems. For UPSC, this connects directly to the environment and ecology syllabus, especially topics like wildlife conservation and how protected areas are managed.
All right, last but not least, there's a report of a human coronavirus HKU1 case in Kolkata. With everything that's happened with COVID-19, any news about coronaviruses tends to make people nervous. How does this HKU1 compare to SARS-CoV-2, the virus that caused the pandemic?
Well, they're both coronaviruses, but that's about where the similarities end. HKU1 is one of 4 types of human coronaviruses that are already circulating in the population, and they usually just cause mild respiratory illnesses like the common cold. Symptoms are typically mild and go away on their own. SARS-CoV-2, on the other hand, was a completely new coronavirus that could cause serious respiratory illness, and as we all know, it led to a global pandemic. So, while identifying this HKU1 case reminds us that there are many different coronaviruses out there, it's not cause for the same level of concern as a novel or highly pathogenic coronavirus.
So HKU1 is more like a common cold virus, although it could be more serious for certain people who are more vulnerable. That distinction is really important when we talk about public health and disease surveillance.
Exactly. It underscores why we need ongoing monitoring of various respiratory viruses and the ability to tell them apart. That's essential for determining the appropriate public health response and for assessing individual risk. For UPSC, this relates to those topics in science and technology, especially virology and public health issues.
And that brings us to the end of part 1 of our deep dive for today. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? From governance and the economy to environmental protection and public health, all things that are incredibly relevant for your UPSC prep. It's fascinating to see how these things are all connected, like how advancements in technology are influencing financial regulation, and maybe even how we monitor wildlife in the future. Think about it, how could these seemingly unrelated events point towards bigger shifts in India's development and priorities going forward? We encourage you to dig deeper into any of the topics that sparked your interest. This was the Deep Dive for March 19th, 2025, Part 1. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss our future deep dives.